My wife Rana and I just came back from the Ambrosetti Forum in Lake Como. And boy, oh boy, was it gloomy. You know, people talking about the crisis in Italy and the crisis of the Eurozone and Greece and all of the financial machinations that we all know too well. Now, I don't want to be overly optimistic, but I want to suggest that there is a ray of silver lining in that what happened in the financial markets has happened time and time again. I'm an American, so my history, who lives in Canada, my history doesn't go back as far as yours, but from what I know, in the late 19th century, in the 1870s, we had one of these financial speculative run-ups. And then we had another one in the Great Depression and the crash of 1929, and another one. And then we had the crash of 2008. And one of the things I've been able to do is to take a long, hard look at these periods. I wrote a book about it. It's called The Great Reset, not the topic of tonight. It's about creativity. But in that book, The Great Reset, looking back over these periods of crises, I found that they opened up two pathways for new rounds of growth and prosperity. First, they stimulate tremendous rounds of innovation. Huge periods of innovation and the creation of new technologies. The period of the 1880s, both in this country and in the United States and in Germany, was one of the greatest outbursts of innovation in human history. And, according to the great historian Alexander Fields, the 1930s, although beset by financial trauma, was the single most technologically progressive era of the 20th century, far outdistancing the tech boom of the 1990s and early 2000s. And when you think about it, how do we really create wealth in our societies? How do we really build prosperity? What is this august institution really about? It's not about moving money around and speculating wildly in the stock market or financial derivatives or even on housing and homes. It's about taking the one real source of economic wealth that we have. All of us share it. We see it in one another. We see it in our children and grandchildren. We see it in every little boy and girl. It's the only real source of wealth that human beings have. It's the thing that distinguishes us from every other species. It's our ability to harness our own creativity, to leverage the creativity of others, and to come together in great conurbations of cities and urban areas like this one, London, and to put our creativity to use to build new technologies, to build new enterprises, to build new public goods, to build new ways of living. And that's why, in a nutshell, I say creativity is our new economy. And it's something we have to harness, we have to cultivate, we have to take great care of. I would submit to you, and I want to encourage you to think about this not only tonight, but through this week and as you go through your deliberations, that in fact, we are living through a very auspicious time. And a time, although we'll have to struggle to rebuild, we'll have to struggle for quite a while because these periods of crisis and reset are generational events. But we are living through the greatest moment of economic transformation in all of human history. That's what I want to share with you. If you look back through all heretofore history, and you look at the way human beings created wealth, for most of that history, we worked hard on the land, we settled near river deltas, we tilled the soil, we built wealth by harnessing raw materials. And then, with the great industrial revolution that the classical economist Adam Smith, Karl Marx, in your own museum, wrote about, we took an additional source of wealth, the wealth that comes from human physical labor, and we combined raw material and human physical labor. The economists called it the three great factors of production: land, labor, and capital. Land, labor, and capital. We combined raw materials, natural resources, with masses of physical labor streaming off the countryside and into the cities in the United States, where my grandparents migrated from the southernmost tip of Italy, part of those great migrations into the booming industrial centers of the world. But for all that time, it was physical assets, natural resources, physical labor that created our great wealth, built our societies, created great cities, industrial cities, Manchester, Birmingham, Leeds, in the north of this country, all throughout the so-called Rust Belt or Middle Belt of the United States. But then over the course of the past 20 or 30 years, something changed. The world was beset by globalization. We saw the rise of what economists call new competitors. They give it a funny name. They call it the BRICS. Brazil, Russia, India, and China. New competitors with using technology and mobilizing billions of people to engage in physical labor caused our countries, for a time, to experience deindustrialization. In the United States, the percent of people in the blue-collar working class, which at one point was over 60% of the population, has dropped to less than 20%. And a startling statistic I present in my new book, The Rise of the Creative Class Revisited, 6% of the workforce in the United States is engaged in directly making things. But our economies have continued to grow. Our economies have continued to innovate. But we've added a new force of production. Or we've cultivated a force we've all had for a long time. We've cultivated and brought it to the fore. And many people have speculated on this great economic transformation. Some called it the rise of an information age, a cybernetic age, a digital economy, a technology age, a post-industrial future, the rise of a service economy. And the great Peter Drucker said that we lived in a time of a knowledge economy, in a knowledge society. Now, all of those theories capture important elements of the transformation we're going through, but I would submit to you, I have submitted to you, that there is something more basic and fundamental. There is something more basic and fundamental to human existence in our economy that goes deeper into what makes us human, that goes deeper into what differentiates us as a species than even when those great classical economists talked about physical labor. It was physical labor, our ability to make things out of physical labor, that made humankind more productive than other species. It's not the information or the technologies we create. It's not the services we provide. It's not the knowledge that's poured into our heads. The thing that distinguishes human beings and binds us together intersubjectively as a whole is our shared human creativity.